I didn't even notice my phone was gone until I reached into my bag and felt that cold, empty space where it should have been. You know that sinking feeling? The one that starts in your stomach and spreads like cold water through your veins? Yeah, that. The subway platform was loud, hot, crowded, and, of course, everybody was staring at their screens except me. Perfect. I retraced my steps mentally, trying to remember when I had last seen it. I had definitely been holding it when I walked into the train, which meant it was probably somewhere on the floor of the subway, being kicked around by strangers or already stolen by now. I stood there, clutching my bag like it was the only thing holding me on this planet, and did the stupidest thing imaginable. I panicked. Like, full-on hands-shaking, heart-thudding, I'm about to cry on public transport, panic. I sat down on the metal bench and put my face in my palms, mentally drafting all the emails I'd have to send about being unreachable and all the passwords I'd have to reset. Great. Just great. Then a shadow fell over me. Excuse me, a voice said, gentle, low, a little hesitant. Is this yours? I looked up. A man was standing in front of me, holding my phone in his hand. My phone? With the ugly pink case I'd pretended I didn't regret buying. I blinked at him like an idiot. Oh my God, yes. Yes, that's mine. He didn't smile. Not really. But something softer than a smile flickered across his face, like he was relieved for me. I found it on the floor of the train, he said. Almost got stepped on. I reached out, and he placed it carefully in my palm, like he worried he might break it. Or like he didn't want to touch my hand by accident. His fingers didn't graze mine, not even a brush. Most guys would have made a show of it. But not him. He kept this respectful little distance, shoulders slightly drawn inward, voice calm. Thank you, I said, breathless. He nodded. No problem. I should have left it there, said thanks and gone home. But I don't know, there was something about him. Quiet. Grounded. Kind in a way that didn't feel performative. He turned to walk away. Wait, I blurted before my brain caught up. He paused, glancing back. What's your name? I asked, for reasons I still don't fully understand. I just didn't want him disappearing into the station crowd like everyone else in the city always does. His eyes held mine for barely a second, like he was deciding something. Adrian, he said softly. Then he stepped back, letting people flow between us like water, and I watched him disappear up the stairs until he was swallowed by the crowd. I didn't realize I was holding my phone to my chest until some woman brushed past me and gave me a weird look. The city felt different walking home. Like someone had turned down the noise. Like I was suddenly aware of how many strangers I'd walked past without seeing. And later that night, when my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Make sure to put a case on tighter next time. It almost escaped again. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. I hadn't given him my number. He must have opened my phone just long enough to find my emergency contact info to return it. He didn't use it for anything else. No flirting. No weird emojis. Just a message that made me smile like an idiot at midnight. I should have left it there. But I didn't. I didn't expect to see him again. New York, or any big city, really doesn't work that way. People appear once, do one kind thing, then dissolve into the blur of everyone else. But life, for some reason, kept nudging us together. It started 4 days later. I was standing outside a tiny bakery near my apartment, squinting at the menu on the window, trying to decide if buying a cinnamon roll counted as self-care or self-destruction. I was chewing on my bottom lip, debating the sugar-to-guilt ratio, when a reflection moved in the glass behind me. A familiar outline. Tall. Hoodie. Quiet posture. I turned around. He stood there, Adrian, holding a small paper bag like he'd just picked up something for himself. For a moment, we just kind of stared at each other. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way. More like two people mutually surprised that the universe was running reruns. You again, he said softly. There it was, his almost smile. Not quite there, but present enough to soften everything in me. I laughed. I swear I'm not following you. He hummed, skeptical but amused. Convenient place to not follow me. I rolled my eyes, more playful than annoyed. Okay, stalker. What are you doing here? Getting breakfast, he said simply, lifting the bag slightly in proof. Right. Normal answer. I should have left it at that. I should have waved, walked home, eaten yogurt like a responsible adult. Instead, I said, cinnamon rolls here any good? He blinked slow, observant, before nodding once. Best in the neighborhood. I've been trying to decide for like 10 minutes, I admitted. Trying to be healthy. And then he tilted his head. You don't look like you believe in that. My mouth fell open. Wow. Rude. He shrugged, calm as ever. Just saying. You look like someone who enjoys her food. Nothing wrong with that. I didn't know whether to be offended or flattered. Together we ended up inside, him holding the door for me without making a big deal out of it, me pretending I wasn't hyper-aware of how close he was standing. I bought the cinnamon roll. Because yes, he was right. We stepped outside, the warm pastry scent curling between us in the cold morning air. How's the phone? He asked suddenly. I held it up. Still imprisoned. He nodded at my answer, like that genuinely satisfied him. Like he'd been wondering. Then silence stretched, not awkward, just delicate, until he shifted his weight, hesitation flickering in his expression. He gestured vaguely down the street. I should get going. Right, I said, even though I didn't want him to. He walked backward for a step, like he expected me to end the conversation. I didn't. You always leave like that? I teased. He paused. Like what? Like you're trying not to be caught staying too long. He looked at me for a long beat, really looked. I felt something flip in my stomach. I don't want to bother you, he said quietly. You're not. His eyes softened in that unsettling, gentle way that made it hard to breathe. Good to know, he said, and then, finally, he smiled. A real one. Subtle but genuine. Then he turned and walked off. I stood there, holding a cinnamon roll, warming my hands on the bag like it had suddenly become the most important pastry of my life. I told myself it was nothing. Coincidence. A nice guy doing a nice thing. But I thought about him the whole walk home. And that night. And the next morning. And the next. So when my phone buzzed 2 days later with a simple message, "Have you tried the cinnamon roll yet?" I answered a little too quickly. I stared at his text longer than any sane person should stare at 8 words. Have you tried the cinnamon roll yet? It wasn't flirty. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even particularly clever. But somehow it made my stomach flip like he'd whispered something illicit instead of asking about baked goods. I typed back, "I'm savoring it." Which was a lie. I had inhaled it the same morning he saw me. But the truth felt too embarrassing, like admitting I had no self-control over pastries or the way he occupied my mind. His reply came almost instantly. Savoring is good. Then a pause. There's another bakery on 8th you might like more. I hesitated, rereading the line. It wasn't an invitation. It wasn't not an invitation. It was somewhere in that maddening gray space where you wonder if a guy is just being nice, or waiting to see if you'll close the distance. So I closed it. Show me. I hit send before fear could drag the words back. A minute passed. Then, tomorrow. When tomorrow arrived, I tore through my closet like I was about to meet a man I wasn't supposed to care about. I finally settled on something intentionally casual, jeans, a soft sweater, hair in a loose ponytail. Pretty, but not trying too hard pretty. We met on the corner outside the subway. He was leaning against a lamppost, hands in pockets, looking like every soft, dangerous feeling I wasn't ready to name. You look different, he said. Good different. He studied me for a long second, too long, and nodded once. Yeah. We walked side by side. He didn't rush. He didn't fill the silence with noise. He just existed next to me in a way that made the city feel less sharp against my skin. The bakery was small, nearly hidden between 2 bookstores. Inside, the air smelled like vanilla, butter, and nostalgia, warm in a way that wrapped around you. He ordered something for himself, black coffee, almond croissant. I ordered what he recommended, partly because he insisted, partly because I liked the way he said, "Trust me." We sat by the window. A soft drizzle had started outside, turning the streets hazy and silver. He sipped his coffee, and I caught him staring at me again. Not in a creepy way. In that way a person stares when they're memorizing the moment. So, he said, elbows on the table, how's life treating you? I shrugged. Depends on the hour. He smiled faintly. Fair. Then he asked about my work, my apartment, my family. Not rapid-fire questions, gentle ones. Curious ones. Like he was putting together who I was piece by piece, and each answer mattered. I asked him things too. His job. His routines. Why he walked that same street the night I dropped my phone. He paused at that one, considering his answer. Habit, he said. Sometimes I walk when I can't sleep. Do you not sleep often? I asked. He laughed under his breath, quiet, almost self-conscious. You could say that. Something in his tone made my chest ache. Not pity. Recognition. There was a heaviness in him. Not darkness, just weight. History. Something I wasn't brave enough to ask about yet. Time slipped. 1 hour. 2. The rain stopped and started again. People came and left. And every minute, the space between us felt smaller. When we stepped outside, the sky was pale. The kind of light that makes everything look softer. Well, I said, thanks for the bakery tour. Anytime. He paused. Really? I nodded, trying not to show how much that single word, anytime, landed inside me. We stood there, the world moving around us, neither of us quite wanting to walk away first. Then he said quietly, you want to do this again sometime? My heart tripped over itself. But I kept my voice steady. Yeah, I'd like that. His lips twitched into that small, impossible smile I'd started craving. Good. When he finally turned and walked off, I felt it again, that stupid tug in my chest. The one that whispered we weren't strangers anymore. That something was shifting. Slowly. But undeniably. And for the first time in months, maybe years. I didn't feel alone. If someone had asked me what we were, I wouldn't have had an answer. We weren't dating. We weren't not dating. We were orbiting, close enough to feel the warmth, far enough to pretend it meant nothing. Our not dates started happening naturally. He'd text at random hours. You hungry? There's a film festival tonight. I found a bookstore you'd like. And somehow I was always saying yes. One night, we ended up at a rooftop movie screening. The air was crisp, the city glowing beneath us like a restless heartbeat. We sat on a blanket he insisted on bringing, sharing a carton of fries that disappeared embarrassingly fast. At some point, without thinking, I leaned into him. Just slightly. Just enough to feel the warmth radiating through his hoodie. He didn't move away. He didn't move closer, either. He just stayed steady, patient, quiet in that way of his that made me feel seen without being watched. Halfway through the movie, I looked over at him. The city lights reflected in his eyes. He turned his head at the same second and caught me staring. My cheeks got hot instantly. What? He asked, voice low. Nothing. I looked back at the screen too quickly. But he didn't look away. I could feel it. Are you enjoying yourself? He murmured. I nodded. Yeah, a lot. Good, he said softly. And the way he said it, like it mattered to him in a way he shouldn't admit, made something dangerous unfurl in my chest. A feeling I didn't want to name yet. It kept growing. On our third not date, we wandered through an art exhibit. Too many people, too much noise, yet somehow I only noticed him. The way he slowed down when I lingered at a painting. The way he stepped closer when a crowd pushed in, protecting my space without making a scene. At one point, I made him laugh, really laugh, and it felt like winning some impossible game. God, it scared me. I could feel myself slipping. Falling. Wanting him. That was the problem. I wasn't ready to want someone again. Not after the last time left me burned and brittle. So I did what any emotionally avoidant, semi-self-sabotaging woman does when things start feeling too real. I pulled back. Not dramatically. Not intentionally. Just enough. Shorter replies. Longer pauses. Canceling plans with vague excuses. And he noticed. Of course he noticed. One evening, he texted. Everything okay? I stared at the message for almost an hour. Then typed the safest lie I could think of. Yeah, just busy. He responded with a simple, okay. No follow-up. No pressure. Just that one word that somehow made my stomach drop. A few days later, we crossed paths near my subway stop, pure coincidence. He looked different. Still soft, still kind, but his eyes were more guarded. Like he was building a wall brick by brick, matching mine. He didn't stop walking. He would have passed me entirely if I hadn't said his name. Adrian? He paused. Turned. Hey. His voice was polite. Neutral. It stabbed more than I expected. You've been distant, I said, instantly hating how defensive it sounded. He raised an eyebrow ever so slightly. Have I? I swallowed. I didn't want you to think. It's fine, he said gently, but it wasn't gentle enough to hide the shift. I didn't want to bother you. There it was again. That line. That quiet retreat. I opened my mouth, some messy confessions sitting in my throat, but he was already stepping back. Take care, okay? And then he turned and walked away. No extra glance. No almost smile. Just distance. Cold, sudden distance. My chest tightened as I watched him disappear into the station crowd. And in that moment, a heart thudding in the worst way, I realized something brutally clear. I'd pushed him away. And he'd finally believed me. And I wasn't ready to lose him. Not like this. Not when I'd barely admitted the truth to myself. I liked him. God, I liked him more than I should. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. My brain was running loops, endless replays of him walking away, the soft set of his shoulders, that quiet restraint that had always drawn me in. I hated myself for being predictable, push away what I want, then panic when it's almost gone. The next morning, I paced my apartment like a caged animal, phone in hand, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to text him. I needed to. But every time I typed a word, I deleted it. Too pushy. Too late. Too everything. By the afternoon, guilt had turned into desperation. He was out there, living his day without me, probably thinking I didn't care. And yet, I couldn't stop obsessing over the way he looked at me in that fleeting second before he'd stepped back into the crowd. I ended up at our usual cafe, pretending to work. I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe he'd come in, maybe not. Half an hour passed. No Adrian. My stomach twisted. Then my phone buzzed. Hey. Just one word. His. Simple, neutral. And it hit me harder than any paragraph of my own panic-filled text could have. I tapped back instantly, my fingers trembling. Hey. Can we talk? A pause. A moment of waiting that stretched forever. Then. Yeah. Where? I wanted to say anywhere. Everywhere. My apartment, the street corner where we met that first time, the park where the leaves were starting to turn. But I didn't. Instead, I typed. The bookstore on 8th? He replied almost immediately. See you there in 20. 20 minutes felt like a lifetime. I rearranged my hair, paced the block, checked my reflection in every window. My chest felt tight. My palms sweated. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to confess. I wanted him to stay. And when he appeared, leaning casually against the door frame, I realized my heart was doing that stupid flip, like it had learned to skip beats just for him. Hey, he said softly, as if he had no idea how much weight that single word carried. Hey, I murmured, voice cracking slightly. We wandered through the aisles, pretending to browse. He glanced at the same books I looked at. Our fingers brushed once. A spark subtle, but enough to make me swallow hard. Finally, I stopped. My hands gripped the spine of a random hardcover, and I forced myself to look at him. I'm sorry, I blurted. For being distant. I didn't mean to. He raised a hand, stopping me mid-confession. It's okay. I noticed. But I figured, you'd come around when you were ready. I froze. My chest heaving. I didn't want to lose you. You haven't, he said, calm as ever. I'm not going anywhere. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I like you, I whispered, voice barely audible. The bookstore felt impossibly quiet, even though people were still around, moving, breathing. Somehow it felt like the world had shrunk to the two of us. He blinked. Then he smiled. That slow, impossible smile that always made my stomach flip. Good, he said. Because I like you too. And for a moment, Nothing else mattered, the missed texts, the distance, my dumb self-sabotage. Nothing but the warmth of his presence, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the soft inevitability of him being exactly who I needed. We stayed there a little longer. Not speaking much, just existing. His hand brushed mine again, and this time, I didn't pull away. Because I wasn't letting him go. And maybe he wouldn't let me. I didn't even realize how much I'd been settling, how much I'd convinced myself that drama, chaos, and constant second-guessing were just normal in men until Adrian. He wasn't like anyone I'd been with before. Not in the flashy, overconfident, attention-demanding way. Not in the cold, distant, or entitled ways. He didn't have the kind of ego that needed to be stroked or the insecurity that had me tiptoeing around his moods. He just existed. Calm. Present. Respectful. Grounded. The first time I noticed it, I realized I could breathe around him. Literally. Not the kind of quick, shallow breaths you take when you're trying to impress someone. Full, deep, unguarded breaths. I didn't have to mask my thoughts, hide my awkward jokes, or adjust my feelings to fit some imaginary mold. I could just be. It was subtle. The way he'd remember I liked my coffee black, no sugar, even when I hadn't said it for weeks. The way he'd listen, not just hear, but actually listen when I talked about my day, my fears, my stupid little triumphs. The way he laughed, not at me, not dismissively, but with me, lightly, making space for my humor without overshadowing it. Other men I dated? Drama. Manipulation. Mixed signals. Pretenses. With them, I'd spent more energy surviving the relationship than actually enjoying it. I thought that was normal, that turbulence equaled passion. Adrian showed me that I'd been wrong. Passion didn't have to feel like fire. It could feel like warmth, steady, enduring, something that seeped into your bones rather than burned out in flashes. And it terrified me. Because part of me had been trained to expect the worst, to anticipate the toxicity lurking in the corners of affection. But here he was. So unassuming. So unthreatening. So good. And I found myself looking at him differently, not like a boy I was curious about, but like a man who could actually matter, who could matter without asking me to compromise pieces of myself I hadn't even realized I was giving away before. It changed the way I saw men entirely. I noticed the contrast sharply in my mind, the other guys, their neediness, their games, their unpredictability. And then Adrian, gentle, grounded, patient. Not perfect, he laughed at himself when he spilled coffee. He got frustrated when the subway was late, but perfect in his humanity, and in the way he made me feel safe and seen without demanding it. It was intoxicating in a quiet way. Not loud or dizzying, just settling. A sense of being home you didn't realize you were searching for until it hit you. And as we walked together that evening, the city glowing under wet streetlights, I realized I could never go back to the old standards, the old expectations, the old heartbreaks. He was proof that good men existed. That you didn't have to tiptoe around your own happiness to make someone else comfortable. That love didn't have to be a battlefield. I found myself thinking, maybe for the first time in years, that I deserve this. Not the drama, not the chaos, not the games. But this. Quiet, steady, honest, unwavering. I glanced at him, stealing a little look as he laughed softly at a street performer. And I felt something entirely new, a mixture of relief and awe. Maybe not all men are trash. Maybe,